You are listening to the Tricorder Transmissions, episode 103. And now, here are Craig and Jeff.
Welcome to episode 103 of the Tricorder Transmissions. This week we are covering the animated series episode The Lorelei Signal, and we are your hosts, Jeff Hewlett.
And Craig Cohen.
Craig, always good to be back with you.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Yeah, so we're going to do, again, like we did in our previous commentaries on the animated series, we're going to have a little bit of information up front, and then we're going to dive right into the episode. So I'll let you guys know ahead of time, though, that we are going to have a special visitor who's going to be dropping in after our commentary is over to share her opinions on this women-focused episode of the animated series. So Heather Barker, my co-host from the Shore Leave show, will be here to talk about this show. So stay tuned once Craig and I are finished. Let's see, Craig. So this episode aired on September 29th of 1973. So quite a while ago. Actually, it's a little bit about a year before I was born.
Same here.
Yeah. So another great TOS link to this episode is that it was written by Margaret Arman. So she worked on 3 episodes of the original series and 2 of the animated series. And she also wrote for the Star Trek Phase 2 series, which never came to pass. So she's also had a writing career in TV, writing for Westerns, which many of the other writers for TOS did. She wrote for The Rifleman and The Big Valley. She also worked on shows later on like Marcus Welby, MD, Barnaby Jones, and Wonder Woman. Also an episode of the Mod Squad. So she's been around the TV horn. For the original series, she wrote The Gamesters of Triskelion, Paradise Syndrome, and The Cloud Minders, which I'm particularly fond of. And for the animated series, she wrote this episode, of course, and the ambergris element. I hope I said that right.
Sounded pretty good to me.
Yeah. So any thoughts on this TOS link?
No, again, it's good to see, that they were able to, maintain the pedigree, if you will, and, had people involved with the animated series that had at least been, a part of the original series. So not that it needs, anything to make it more legitimate, but it definitely adds a level of legitimacy.
Yeah, agree. I feel the same way. It's great that we've had some episodes so far that have been written by some of the prior TOS writers and directors. So this is fantastic. And I'm looking forward to this because this episode is kind of significant in a way, because this is the first time we're going to see the Enterprise female crew save the men, which is kind of cool. I think it's in something that, we didn't see a lot of female heroism on the original series.
Mm-hmm.
So very cool that we're going to see Uhura and Nurse Chapel finally get their due.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. Are you ready to jump into the commentary, Craig?
Oh, yeah. Let's go for it.
All right. So we will start our commentary. Feel free to pause us if you don't want spoilers and go watch and then come back. We are going to start our commentary in 3, 2, 1. All right.
Yeah.
There we go again. We got our Starfield, and it's a shame that I have to listen to this episode muted and I don't get to hear the cool theme music.
Yeah.
But it's okay. I hear it when I edit the episodes together anyway.
Yeah. So I did notice that there's a later point in this episode where it seemed like they had lifted music from the original series. Was that just me thinking they did a really good job, or was it an actual grab?
I do not think it was. In my notes that I went over, I didn't see anything that specifically called out music from the original series, but it did sound like it, didn't it?
Yeah. So great job there. I mean, it definitely it definitely felt like that. And one thing I've always loved about the original series music and the animated series music is, I know it didn't air as such, but this the animated series and the original series to me always feels like a show you could watch really, really late at night. And part of my feeling for that might be, going through a couple of those 24-hour marathons they used to do on Channel 11 out of New York.
Yeah.
But for me, it's, the music really makes it feel like you're watching the episode at 2 a.m. or something.
It does. They definitely recaptured the feel with the animated series. So I like the fact that this episode right up front mentions the Klingon and Romulan empires.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we're in another uncharted area of space or previously uncharted area of space. And there are ships that are vanishing, and they've been vanishing for many, many years. And Klingons and Romulans were among some of the ships that disappeared. So very cool throwback there. And go ahead.
No, I thought the opening shot again, and we talked about this last episode, was, getting to see the bridge from a different angle. And in this episode, they sort of start with a really, really cool pan that, sort of ends on Spock.
Yeah. And you had that really awesome likeness of the ship right after the opening credits before they went into that top-down bridge view. And is this the first time we're seeing a lot of hallway shots?
I think so. That definitely jumped out to me as feeling new.
Yeah, I don't recall seeing hallway shots. I think we just seen a couple different ones, and we saw McCoy and Chapel in the hall, and then a couple random crew members kind of frozen in their poses. So I like that we see Nurse Chapel. I don't know if we've seen Nurse Chapel yet.
I don't think so.
Is this the first time?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So now we're getting a strange signal that is making some sort of an appeal to the men, but Uhura is not feeling it.
Yeah,
she's getting nothing. So we're getting a little foreshadowing of what's to come. But I love the fact that Uhura gets so much screen time in this episode. And she's getting to actually do some real dialogue here instead of just her normal, yes, Captain, no, Captain, type of stuff.
Yeah, and I wanted to sort of ask you about that in the sense that this is an episode that is really, really sort of driven by Uhura and Nurse Chapel to a lesser extent. And it almost makes me wonder if, part of the appeal of the animated series is the fact that they were able to do an episode like this, but also what factors were at play that contributed to allowing this. And by that, I mean, how much less ego was there involved with William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy to sort of get in front of the camera as much as possible?
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point, because I don't know. I wish we had Mark Cushman's book that he's working on the animated series, because I'd love to know how much input, if any, the actual actors and actresses had on the scripts and the way things were, because they had absolutely no input on how the animators did any of this work.
Yeah.
So really the only thing I think they could really have much of an influence on was, off the cuff changes to the scripts as they were reading them and their own ways of reading them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't think that Shatner would have had as much of a chance to steer the ship, pun intended, his way.
Yeah. And I also think that he was definitely at a different point in his career where I don't want to say that he was at a desperate point in his career, but he might not have had as much pull as he had on the original series.
You're probably right on that.
Yeah. But I mean, it's good in a way because, like I said, we're able to get an episode like this where, as much as this feels like it could have been an original series episode, there are several reasons that it really couldn't.
Yeah, absolutely true. Did you notice that Spock mentioned a Vulcan marriage drum earlier in one of his visions? That's something I don't think we heard of in the original series.
No, and that was going to sort of factor into, I guess, our discussion at the end of the episode.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll hold on to it until then.
Yeah.
So we've gotten some of our main characters, Kirk, Spock, McCoy, and a new guy, have beamed down to the planet's surface.
And why couldn't that be the dude with the mustache from?
I know. God, he needs to be around more.
I would love somebody to cosplay that at the Vegas convention.
Yeah, you know what? That might be my cosplay idea. I was looking for something simple. Just get the big old twirly mustache, and I can be the transporter guy from the animated series.
That is too funny.
Yeah. So you showed a little bit of a non-standard tricorder sound there when Spock was doing his scanning. So I guess that was a sound they couldn't appropriate from the original series. I guess they needed to use their own brand.
Mm-hmm.
Notice all these women look just about identical.
Yes.
I wonder if that was the to save money on the animation, which we know Filmation always did, or if that was intentional.
Yeah, I'd like to think it was intentional.
Could be. It could be. Some of this architecture that we're seeing here is stuff that probably could not have been done, or would have to have been done significantly differently on the show if they'd have done this as an episode of the original series. Once again, here we go. Here we go with the magical mystery computer. Once again, this is another one of those TOS carryovers where they have this magical computer that can get these camera angles on just about anything, anywhere. So it can see inside the Enterprise.
Yeah.
You wonder how these things could possibly work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But so I guess you've got a head female. They identified her as the head female. So that kind of implies that there are also males somewhere. But we don't really know because they say that the males are in another building and we haven't seen any of them.
Mm-hmm.
So, very strange. And what did you think of the name of the computer, the Opto-Odd? Does that have a meaning?
Oh yeah, I don't know.
I don't know either. Oh, that was just seemed like a strange choice for a name. There's got to be something to it. Maybe I'll try Googling around and seeing if it actually means something. Is something like optical audio or optical audible, something like that, just abbreviated?
Yeah.
Yeah. What is that chick doing with those spinning gems on her hands? Yeah, I don't know. I love Kirk stumbling through his captain's log.
Yes.
That's great. I'm just picturing Shatner reading that in my head.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and Spock can't catch a ball. Oh. Man, this is tough. So another throwback to TOS there. Bones mentioned Sorry and Brandy.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of cool. Yeah. So I wonder what that tear is for.
Yeah.
You see that tear run down her cheek? It's like almost like she doesn't want to capture the poor men here.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone's old all of a sudden.
And I do like the architecture of this compound. It definitely feels inspired by the original series and the sets that they might have built.
Yes, it definitely does. It looks very alien in a very cool way. So it kind of has some traditional pieces there, some of the stonework and some of the curtain work, but then you've got those more organic shapes, which is pretty neat. So here we go. This is the beginning of what I think is part of the coolest part of this episode was where you got Uhura and Nurse Chapel working together to figure out what's going on. They're doing the sleuthing. They're using the computer to figure all this stuff out. And they mentioned that they have a women's science team on the ship. I really like that. And we also have the introduction of Davison, who is a female head of female security lead for the Enterprise, which is cool. We never realized they had any of that stuff.
Yeah, it's convenient for this episode.
It is. And Uhura takes command of the ship for the first time ever. Mm-hmm. I love it. I think that's awesome. I know a lot of people will probably say, well, they just did it for the effect, or they wanted to give her a little bit of a hero moment. But I think that's really cool that they that they wrote this part in. I know that there was an interview with Nichelle Nichols where she was really surprised at this when she read the script for the first time.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, she thought that was really great. So what the... Oh, God. And now all of a sudden these ladies are super women. They're tossing the guys around like rag dolls. And this is probably the weirdest part of the entire episode to me. This is where the ship is slowly creeping into the frame, and you've got Scotty singing this. Is this like a Gaelic song or like a Scottish traditional song or something? What is he singing?
I don't know.
So weird. And even the closed captioning doesn't have the lyrics.
No.
So I don't know what the words even are. I can't even read them for you guys out there. But very peculiar. And it's so long.
Yeah.
And there's Scotty is sitting in the captain's chair with a dopey smile on his face, singing this song. And Uhura, almost got that jettison pod button. And Uhura is, she's going to have Scotty removed from command because he's emotionally compromised. And and she's accepting full responsibility for her action. And I love how Nurse Chapel just kind of goes right along with it. She's like, okay, sounds good to me. Like she protested a little bit earlier, but now she's like, yeah, sure, whatever. I'm on board for the mutiny. Oh, man. Some serious 70s guitar riffs happen in this episode, by the way. I absolutely love the fact that, I mean, if they didn't have the 70s guitar riffs and that wah-wah effect on the guitar, and they just had regular music, you would have no idea what time period this was produced.
Oh, yeah.
But the 70s music stamps it.
Yeah.
There's no doubt in anybody's mind that this was from the 70s.
Yeah.
But, so here we go with Spock figuring out how to escape. So this is Spock's MacGyver moment. We've seen many of these. Using some piece of McCoy's medical kit to demagnetize a door. And, and again, I wonder if this had any sort of a throwback or any kind of an intentional nod to the Deadly Years.
Yeah, it's hard not to think of that.
Yeah, slightly a different scenario, but similar effect.
Mm-hmm.
God, that Filmation running animation is great. So now you got these 4 old dudes are going to hide in this giant urn, and the girls are chasing them down, but they're going to just miss them climbing into the urn. Yeah, they just missed them. Yeah. So, and they said that they're aging 10 years per day. That's pretty extreme.
Well, yeah, and also their initial aging was pretty. I mean, how many days had they been there?
I don't think it was really stated, because they were kind of thrown in that bedroom thing, and we don't know how long they slept for, but they definitely look like they aged more than 1 day's worth.
Yeah,
10 years per day.
Look at Kirk's neck. It's got a lot of, he's starting to get that turkey syndrome on his neck.
Yeah, he's got the jowls hanging down. Yeah, he's not looking too good. But he looks older than McCoy does.
Yes.
But another carryover from original series, Spock's physiology transfers over, so he's not aging quite as fast as the rest of them because his lifespan, I guess, is much longer.
Mm-hmm.
So he's dealing with that much better. So that's kind of neat.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. So Spock got a hero moment there, which is really cool. He's going to attempt to figure out where their equipment is and try to find out where the communicators and phasers are being stored. So he's going to climb out by himself while poor Kirk takes a nap.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that shot of his little head popping up out of the urn there.
Mm-hmm.
And we conveniently cut to a commercial break so that Spock is now out, so they don't have to have him climb all the way out.
Yeah.
But he's able to sneak back in undeterred. And here's another thing. You know, Spock is able to imitate the women's voice and activate the computer?
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know he was able to do that. I didn't know that was one of Spock's qualities.
Yeah.
I mean, who on the show was able to? Oh, it was in It was in the Abraham Lincoln episode where the one Klingon was able to imitate the Vulcan guy, right?
Oh yeah.
And call for Spock. We had no idea. So Spock very easily is able to find the communicators with the help of the opto-odd computer. And Spock's onto it. He knows to request an all-female landing party.
Mm-hmm.
So that he's figured it out too. So yeah, that's kind of an ominous fade to commercial there too. This poor Spock is out on the ground. But here you got an Uhura captain's log.
Yeah.
Ship's log. So that's really cool. Uhura is no joke in this. I love it.
No, it's really great, and I'm sure Nichelle Nichols loved doing this episode.
Oh, and look, Nurse Chapel changed into a red uniform.
Yeah.
So I love this. Uhura just IDs herself. Oh no, there's Nurse Chapel back in red again.
Yeah.
That's and blue again. That's
Nice
weird.
continuity error.
Yeah. I love this. Uhura is like, yeah, whatever. She shoot first and ask questions later. Mm-hmm. She's like, okay, you're all going down. Because now, if that was Kirk, they'd have taken over and they would have gotten captured. But Uhura's like, nope, we're just going to shoot you all down right now. I love it. Great. So this is really cool because you're seeing Uhura really taking charge here. She's splitting people up into search parties. Telling people, I love it. This is great. I wish there were more episodes like this.
Mm-hmm.
They're more fun. And here is this weird Spock and Nurse Chapel mental connection. Did you find this odd?
Yes.
Because so Spock is using some sort of telepathy to contact Nurse Chapel and lead her to him, and he calls her Christine.
Yeah.
Is that a throwback to the whole purple soup incident?
It seems like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you notice how short Chapel's skirt is in this?
Yes.
Good Lord. I think they're shorter than they were on the original series.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Uh-oh. And now you got your ticking time bomb, Craig.
Yeah, I love that.
Yep. So it started to pour rain, and now the urn that the old members of the crew are stuck in is filling up with water, and they will soon drown.
I think it's interesting that nobody went gray.
Yeah. That's a good point. I wonder if they've got old man smell. Do you think old Vulcan smell is the same as old human man smell?
No, it's got to be slightly different.
No, you're probably right. And he's still calling her because I love that Uhura is like vaporizing like pieces of pottery to scare them into helping her out. Oh, I love it. So they're gonna activate the computer. See, now here's my big continuity question for you, Craig. If they could have just used the computer to find the guys before, why didn't they just do that? Like they can use the computer to find the guy stuck in the urn now, right?
Yeah.
I don't get why they just didn't turn the computer on and watch where they were running.
Yeah.
Oh, so and here's the expose on the past. So the planet, strangely enough, drains the men of their vitality and gives it to the females to make them live forever, right? So it's another one of those types of scenarios, fountain of youth type thing, or the evil fountain of youth, rather.
Yeah.
So hey, nice phaser. It's a good looking phaser. Good likeness there.
And this really is a story device that sort of really takes a play from the original series book, in the sense that you've got these quote unquote villains that have a reason for their villainous actions. Yeah,
and I was kind of scratching my head though. Do you think these women would be okay with these guys dying off like that? Their countrymen, their fellow people that they originally landed there with. Would they really be okay with the guys just dying off and them living forever? Would they not have tried to find a way to stop it?
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, and that's one of the key differences between the animated series and the original series is you've got a reduced running time, and you've got a different expected or anticipated audience.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, that's a good observation.
Mm-hmm.
Again, that's one of those the explanations that I guess we have to go with. But did you see that phaser setting 1? There's a different phaser setting that they ordered, that Uhura ordered. I'm not sure what that means.
Mm-hmm.
Phaser setting 1. So once again, they're trying to cure them of their old agedness, but didn't they just go back to their original ages last time they aged?
Yes.
They just snap back, right? But in this one, it's not happening. So I guess their life force was drained to the point where their bodies are just, they can't regenerate. But they're gonna...
long odds.
Yeah, 99.7 to 1. So, yeah, but they're gonna use the transporter this time. And I wonder, this made me wonder, because I think this is something we talked about many times, is why the transporter could be the ultimate medical device.
Oh, totally.
Couldn't it? I mean, if you had anything whatsoever wrong with you, they could run you through the transporter and restore you to a prior version of your physical self, right?
Yeah, lose an arm, boom, just go on the transporter.
Exactly. I mean, and now, well, they're kind of hedge the bets there by saying there's a good chance that it won't work, and you'll wind up lost in space, or you'll disperse. But they beat the odds, of course. And there they are, right back to normal.
Mm-hmm.
And Uhura tells Kirk he's more handsome than ever.
Yes.
I bet you that was a suggestion Shatner made. Yeah, but I think that this makes the transporter the eternal life machine.
Mm-hmm.
I think you could seriously stay alive forever if you just kept rolling yourself back. You wait a couple months, then beam through, roll yourself back to your 3 months ago state, and just keep doing it over and over again.
Yeah, but with those odds, eventually, 99.7 to 1, you're really gambling every time.
It's true. Yeah, that's a good point. So I guess I have a couple of other questions, or I guess one big question. They're in the beginning of this episode, they said that there are other ships that got lost.
Yeah.
And I guess we assume that their fate was similar to what the Enterprise crew's fate would have been.
Mm-hmm.
But if the women knew that men would die when they came there, why didn't they just ask to be moved somewhere else? Why couldn't they say, "Hey, passing ship, hello, distress call, this planet is doing this to us, and men will die if they come here. Please take us somewhere else." Are we supposed to believe that they were actually not bad people? Because I think that the fact that they didn't ask any of the previous ships to rescue them makes them very bad people. Because they knew it was happening, and they started to lure people there because they wanted to retain their eternal life.
Yeah.
I think that's what it was. I don't think there was anything good going on at all down there, and I don't buy the victims at all.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a completely appropriate read, and really valid. And yeah, I really can't find any way to disagree with that.
All right. Well, I guess we don't have to discuss that much further, but essential voting. I guess it's time for that. And I've already tipped my hand many times, but I think this is a great episode. I think this is essential for technically, I'll call it essential for the introduction of the Vulcan marriage drum and phaser setting 1 and Spock's telepathy with Nurse Chapel. I think is very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll piggyback on that and say that I do deem this an essential watch as well. And I'll also just add to the fact, and I think this weighed on some of my original series votes as well, is it's an episode where we really get to see Uhura in a light we haven't seen her before.
Yes, totally agree. I like that she's got that expanded role. And it's great for Nurse Chapel as well. And I like the fact that we're introduced to some of the other female contingents of the crew. So we've got female security officers and female science officers. It's a forecast of things to come in other Trek series after this, where we get our female doctors and female captains and female security officers and things. That I think it's really great that that an animated series kind of pushed things forward that way. So, interesting side note. Usually we always pick on poor James Doohan, having done a bunch of voices on an episode, but Nichelle Nichols did 4 voices on this episode. She did herself, Davison, Dara, and the computer voice.
Wow.
Yeah, so
nice.
A lot of work for Nichelle Nichols.
Ah, good for her.
So yeah, very, very cool. So anything else you want to say before we wrap up our commentary?
No, this was another fun one.
All right, so excellent. So everybody stay tuned. We're going to have a little bit of a chat with Shore Leave co-host Heather Barker on her thoughts on this episode of the animated series. So stay tuned for that, and we'll see you soon. Hi, everybody. I am back as promised, and with me is my co-host from the Shore Leave series, Heather Barker.
Hi, how are you?
Wonderful. How are you?
I'm excited.
You're excited?
I'm excited because I'd never watched the animated series, and oh gosh, that's embarrassing to reveal to the Trek world out there. But for some reason, I never did, and so I decided that I would watch this episode as my first episode, and now I'm hooked.
Wow, you're actually, so that means you enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did. And I'm going to have to go back and watch the last 3, or I guess the first 3 of the series, and then finish them out. And this is a very novice question. Is there just one season of this, or are there more?
There's technically 2, but the second one is very short.
Okay. I did not even go into Netflix and look. I watched this episode, and I was impressed.
Really?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the animation, and I guess I haven't really listened to a lot of other reactions. I've listened to some of the previous episodes that you guys have done, and I think the animation is cool. The only thing I would agree with you guys about the eyes of the characters, and the eyes just being the same color as their flesh.
Yeah, it's a little creepy.
It's a little odd, but overall, like the background in this episode especially, and hopefully they're all like this. I don't know. I will find out. But I thought it was really beautiful. I was impressed for the time that this came out. I thought it looked pretty good.
Yeah, for the early 70s. I think I've said this before. I know Craig agrees that I think the animation gets a really bad rap. I don't think it's as bad as a lot of people say.
No.
It is. And so many people that I know really trash the animated series. And I really think it's much better than that. I think it's very underrated.
Well, I will say this, just from having watched this one episode. I mean, I don't necessarily recall anyone trashing it, but I think that a lot of people just don't want to count it as canon. Don't spend time on it because it's a cartoon. And I'm just going to say now, for those of you that haven't seen it, give it a try. And that's from me just watching one episode, and you can call me crazy later. But I think that it's worth at least trying out. And if you don't like it, you don't, but you might find that you do. And then you get a whole new piece of Star Trek, which is awesome.
Exactly. And we're going to have to get you to work on Jim Morehouse to change his opinion.
Oh, goodness. Has he watched it? Because I don't remember what his opinion is.
Oh, he absolutely hates it.
He hates it.
He trashes it.
Jim.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Absolutely trashes it.
Okay. Well, we'll just agree to disagree and move on.
Yes, as we always do. But it will be a convention topic, I'm sure.
Absolutely. I'm sure.
So we talked through this episode, Craig and I. We did our normal commentary, and we did a little pre-commentary talk about the writer, Margaret Arman. And something that really stuck out to me about Margaret was that she wrote The Paradise Syndrome, which was part of your cosplay last year at the convention.
Yeah, we did Miramani's Tribe, and so there were 4 women and 1 Kirok, of course. And it was a lot of fun, and that's something that stood out to me. I went and researched the episode a little bit after I watched it and found that information as well. So I was really delighted to see that she had written that along with Gamesters of Triskelion, which I was surprised that a woman wrote that.
When you did your cosplay for the Paradise Syndrome, does that episode have particular significance?
I think, well, Sue had proposed doing it, and at the time, it really didn't. But I went back and watched the episode to look at obviously the elements of the cosplay, and it does, because I think that relationship between Kirk and Miramani is something very special. Even though it's condensed into a small period of time and is over very quickly, which is sad. It's one of those where I really felt that he very much cared about her. And as a fan of Star Trek Continues, if anyone hasn't seen The White Iris, they definitely need to go see it, because it touches on that relationship, and there is something very special in that episode, I will say without spoiling it, that connects back to Miramani. So I would say more, but I hate to spoil anything. So maybe down the road I will come back and explain why more so. But yeah, I really developed a love for that episode and for that relationship. And I think that Miramani was just a very special character. And I'm sad that we didn't get to see more of her. But as we know, we had to stick to our Lady of the Week.
Yes. Yeah, she was quite tragic. Quite the tragic end.
Yeah.
For Miramani. Well, thankfully, the ending of this episode of the animated series is not quite as tragic as the end of the Paradise Syndrome.
No, we had a better outcome.
Yeah, we did. We did. And so since this was your first episode of the animated series that you watched, I had no idea that you hadn't watched them. There were a lot of things in these animated series episodes, and this one in particular that Craig and I were honing in on, and that was some of the backdrops, some of the painted backdrops on the alien planet we thought were particularly good. So since this was your first time watching the animated series, were you surprised at the quality of some of the backgrounds, or were you disappointed, or?
No, I was in love with them. I thought that the colors they used were just absolutely gorgeous. I loved that the guys all commented on the architecture when they got to the planet. But no, I thought, yeah, the color scheme was gorgeous. And even like the shots of the Enterprise, there's one where it's just, moving. Well, there's several, I guess, where it's just moving across the screen while they do the captain's log. I'm just really impressed by the graphics, and maybe that's silly, I don't know, but where they're going over the planet during Scotty's little song, I actually did a screen capture of that, and that is now my lock screen on my phone because I just thought it was so pretty.
Oh, wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I was really impressed. So I'm hoping that the rest of the episodes are about that same level. I have seen bits and pieces of episodes when other people have done like live tweets on the episodes, and I know some of the graphics get a bit trippy. So I'm interested to see them all now. I have to.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing your opinions on some of the other ones. I can tell you that the animation is about the same across the entire series. Whether or not the stories are as good remains to be seen.
Yeah, I've heard some comments about the various ones. I don't have, names of any of the episodes that I've heard negative comments about, but I'll find out for myself.
Yes, you will. So this episode of the animated series is quite special, and one of the reasons for that is that this is the one and only time that Uhura actually assumes command of the ship. And as someone who's very familiar with the original series and all the other series, how did you feel about Uhura's authoritative taking over of the ship when she realized that the men were no longer capable of running it?
I'm all for it. I had no idea, what this episode was about. I went in completely blind to every aspect. So I was just like, hell yes. When it happened, I was so excited. I think I knew about it. I've listened to the Mission Log podcast where they went over the animated series, and that was last summer. So I don't have it all fresh in my memory. But I did remember that she got to take over the ship, and it was badass. I don't know if I can say that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was such a great part of the episode, and I'm so glad that you invited me to jump in on this specific episode because of that. It's all about woman power, I like to say, instead of girl power, because we're women. So I was really excited, and when they just got out the phasers and fired, I was a little surprised by that. I was like, oh, okay, she's really taken charge. But I loved it, and I wish that we got to see more of that in this series. And I think that our JJ Uhura is a bit more aggressive, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word specifically, but she's definitely got more of that Uhura
That's a great
in her
observation.
character. Yeah, I definitely see it. So I'm interested to see what they do with that in Star Trek Beyond, because I think they've done a good job of displaying that in the last two movies.
That's a really good observation, and we did not hit on that at all in our commentary or our after conversation. That the JJ universe Uhura it kind of does remind me a bit of this animated series Uhura in the strength of character and her forcefulness, which I'm glad that you brought up the whole phaser incident, because Craig and I had a laugh about that. That we were saying that if that was Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, they would have been disarmed and captured.
Yeah,
They would never have fired.
Oh, it was just. I really was caught off guard because I was not expecting that, because, the women really didn't do anything besides say, we're not standing down. But I guess that's enough to provoke her.
She was like, all right, whatever. Well, they started to charge.
Yeah.
They started to charge the security detail, and you know what? You don't mess with Uhura and the female security detail.
You don't. And that was just, I took a screenshot of both sides of that standoff, because I loved seeing that team of women beam down and take control. We need more of that in Star Trek. We really do.
Yeah, and so speaking of that, that was something that I thought was great about this episode as well, is that it introduced us to the fact that on the Enterprise, in the time of the original series, there were such things as female security guards and female science teams on the ship. And I was reading an interview with Roddenberry where he said that he wanted to display Uhura's command capabilities on the original series, but he couldn't, and the animated series gave him a little bit more leeway to make that happen. But I was wondering, what was your reaction when you saw all of these female officers just come out of the woodwork?
I was floored. I was so excited. It's just such a wonderful thing to see as a woman, and I don't have any other way to explain it. It was just like, oh my, this is awesome. I geeked out, really. I'm so overwhelmed with like excitement and emotion that's really all I can say. And we don't see those women in the series. Even we do see, our main characters later on in the various series, but I think that from discussions I've had with other fans, something that we'd really love to see are what happens in the lower ranks, not just the bridge team, not just the doctors. We want to see what goes on with the other staff, because like the real workings of the ship, what shifts are like. And I think that would be something really cool to see in a series, which I don't think it's going to be in the upcoming series, but definitely food for thought, because I think we would see more of those characters. And there's just a lot of opportunity there to explore that and to put those characters, whether they're a certain gender or a person of color, there's just so much opportunity going forward that would be so amazing to see. It would get that reaction out of me. I would be excited forever.
It sounds like a really good subject matter for another one of those fan productions.
Oh gosh. Yeah, I'm really apprehensive about what's going on in the fan film world right now, with the Axonar case and everything.
Yeah, you would think Star Trek Continues could do a little bit of that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I really can't rave enough about Star Trek Continues.
Yeah, and I'm sure they'll be at the convention this year, so we can talk to them
Yeah.
a little bit.
Oh, we definitely should.
Yeah. So how about we flip it over and we take a look at not the heroic women, but the evil women on this episode, because that was a topic that came up in our after discussion. Craig and I, we were talking about the alien women who were attempting to deprive Kirk, Spock, McCoy, and their poor red shirt companion of their life force. The end of the episode gives a bit of a backstory as to why these women are doing what they're doing and how they came to do what they were doing. And it sets up this premise where the planet, by some virtue of whatever power the planet has, created this situation where the women, live off of the life force of the men, right? Yep. And all the men just mysteriously croak and the women stay young forever. Now, I brought this point up to Craig because at the end of the episode, they make it seem like the women on this planet almost didn't have a choice, or they were somehow redeemable. It was almost excusable, and they were helping them get off the planet and go move somewhere else so that they wouldn't have to live like this anymore. But I thought that it was implied earlier in the episode that other ships had been there prior and had disappeared. So we were to assume that those men on those ships, the Klingons and the Romulans, were all victims of these women. And I was thinking to myself, if that is the case, then I don't think these women are at all redeemable. And I think they're absolutely pure evil, because all they had to do, as in many episodes of Trek prior to this, all the aliens have to do is say, hey, Kirk, could you give me a hand? Just give me a lift to the next planet, just beam us up, put us in the mess hall for an hour or two, warp to next planet and drop us off. Thanks. That's all they had to do.
Yeah. As redeeming as the episode is for the women of the Enterprise, the other side of the spectrum is really quite terrible to me. At first, I was interested in their civilization and what was going on, being that it was entirely female. When they kind of started getting strong and overtook the men, I was like, oh, we've got some like Wonder Woman, Amazonian stuff going on.
Yeah, really.
They're all super strong
around
now. I was like, wow, okay, I'm kind of into this. But, at any time, they knew what was going on. So at any time, they could have taken it upon themselves to change their circumstances. So that to me is, it's very confusing and sends a lot of mixed messages about Thela and her people. Yeah, it's frustrating. Even the title, the Lorelei Signal. I didn't know anything about the history of that title or what Lorelei was, and did some research there. And it's basically connected to the mythos of the sirens. And I think this one might have been German, the Lorelei. But I definitely understood when they were on the ship and they were hearing the signal and seeing the visions that this was a siren call. I got that immediately. And of course, you get to the planet and the women are all, white, blonde, and beautiful, apparently. So, I was really kind of torn because I was like, well, okay, we've got this, stereotypical, oh, these are what beautiful women are. And, oh, am I controlling the men? It was tough. If the other half of this episode hadn't been having an extremely awesome crew from, female crew from the Enterprise take over, I don't think I would have liked this episode as much because they seem in control. Thela seems, to me, she had a good measure of authority. It's like, okay, I really wanted to like them, especially when, this is awful, but especially when they kind of took over physically. It's like, wow. But it kind of fell flat. And I wish that they had, even if they had redeemed them in a different way, it just made them stronger or responsible.
Well, there was a moment just after they got Kirk, Spock, and McCoy in their grips, and they were all kind of sitting around watching the one woman spin the crystals on her hands. But once they overpowered Kirk, Spock, McCoy, and their red shirt buddy and dragged them out of the room, there was a brief moment where you saw one of Thiela's people, and a single tear went down her cheek.
Oh, yeah.
And I was thinking to myself, are we supposed to assume that she's just not really happy about what they have to do here?
And it wasn't Thiela, right?
I don't believe it was,
Okay,
but it was one of the women that was sitting down, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you could look at it as, they're trapped by the planet and, oh, this is happening again. And maybe she's thinking, how do we break this cycle? But it's not that hard to figure out, ladies.
No, really, especially because they're going out of their way not to ask to be rescued. They're going out of their way to lure ships in and bring the men down because they're putting visions in their heads with the whole signal thing.
And that's what sirens do. I mean, that's the mythos of the siren. So it's like they were taking it and then trying to turn it into something maybe a little better by trying to get this message that, oh, they weren't really bad. A very mixed message with them.
Well, and not to mention one more point for me about these alien women is that they are the ones that tell us their backstory. Right?
Yeah.
They're the ones that tell us how this came to be. How do we know they're telling the truth? How do we know that they're not really sirens and they just want to be transported to another planet where they don't have to wait for a ship to come by, right? Where are they going to transport them to? They're going to put them on a planet with men on it?
If no more ships come by, they're not going to get more men to eat.
Exactly. So they could have made up that whole, like, oh, the planet did this to us, and if we leave the planet, then our powers will go away, right?
Yeah.
They could be BSing.
They could, but they've got to wrap it up in that 30 minutes. Can we talk about the Opto-Odd?
Why not?
Like, that was just, number one, Opto-Odd. It was just such a weird name. I just found it to be so funny. It was so odd, and I didn't really think it made a lot of sense in the first place, and I didn't quite understand when they communed with it, operated it, and the weird noise. How did they make that noise?
Yeah, and how did Spock imitate it?
He's just that good. Yeah, I had read something where, or maybe, I don't know, it was somewhere in my research of this episode where they compared Spock's ability to imitate that to Data's future abilities to imitate certain sounds. And I thought that was interesting, but it just wasn't natural. Like it just seemed very out of place to me. I don't know. I don't know what I would suggest that they have done differently with communing with it, or maybe they could have given a tad more backstory on exactly what, like, did they, I guess it was there and they went to the planet and I don't know.
Or did they build it? Did they bring it with them?
Yeah, I still just had a lot of questions about the backstory and the technology of it. And, we don't get that in a quick 22-minute episode.
It's another one of those Star Trek machines that has these almost unbelievably bizarre abilities. Like it can see inside of things that are miles away or light years away. So, I mean, they're watching the inside of the Enterprise's bridge on the screen of the computer. How is that happening?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, where's the camera? I mean, is it tapping into a camera that's on the Enterprise? And why would the Enterprise have a camera on the bridge looking down on top of everybody?
Seriously.
It's weird.
I want to know, but we will never know, sadly. And didn't that shot make you think of, like, the play set? Like
it
the
does.
old play? I was like, oh my gosh,
It does. But then again, Heather, the Enterprise has those same capabilities because in the original series, they use that all the time. Like they can look at the planet's surface and they can see what's going on the view screen, but they don't have a probe down there with a camera on it. They just pull the images up. So they can pretty much see anything, anywhere, anytime. But I guess by today's technology, I can't see how that's possible. But maybe by sometime in the future, there's a way that they could do it.
I suppose.
It's so strange to me.
It is science fiction, so
yeah, I know. You're not supposed to think that much into it. I know.
Yeah, but I seriously came away with lots of questions about the Opto-Odd. Aside from just a strange name, I'm like, where did they come up with this? Like, I wish I could have found a bit more information about that. And I have a very, very big pile of books that I'm going to attempt to get through this summer. And one of them is Nichelle Nichols' Beyond Uhura. And apparently in that she talks about this episode because this is really her episode, of all the episodes in Star Trek. And one of the things that really stuck out with me, and I've learned this about the history of the animated series I do know about, and that they didn't even have plans to have her on the show. And that Leonard Nimoy put his foot down and refused to be on the show if Nichelle and I believe George and Scotty were on it. I know that they just wanted to have the main people on there. And so as I watched this, what really struck me, I definitely recognized Major's voice, as Nurse Chapel and then as Thela. And then we had Nichelle as the computer.
Yeah, isn't that weird?
And it's so obviously her, in this high-pitched voice. And it was so delightful. It was amusing and fun. And I just loved the fact that we had, these two women that I love, both Majel and Nichelle. And I made a tweet a long time ago that said, if Jean is the great bird of the galaxy, then Nichelle is the nightingale.
Oh.
That was my little tweet. And I didn't have one about Majel, but I just, as time has gone on and I realized what an important role she played throughout all of Star Trek. I mean, she was there, up until she passed away. She's been there. And just information about, her life with Gene Roddenberry. I've just come to adore and respect her a great deal. So this episode was very special. And I'm sure the rest of the animated series will be, because I know that, they play multiple characters throughout. But that was just something that stuck out to me, especially Nichelle as the computer.
Yeah, it's funny because usually that's Majel's role.
Yeah. It was so cute.
Yeah, that's a very common thread in the animated series with someone doing multiple voices. Usually it's James Doohan, but...
Yeah. The song.
Yeah, the song was a little bit rough.
I'm just like, okay. And I'm just, slowly watching the Enterprise. And I'm like, all right, we've got enough filler. We could have talked about the technology of the Opto-Odd.
Yeah, really. That's the funny thing about these episodes are so short and they have to compress so much. They dedicated so much time to that slow Enterprise moving and Scotty singing.
So when this was made, was the audience supposed to be children?
We've been debating that. Craig and I have been debating that because,
okay.
But I definitely, by the subject matter of a couple of the episodes, I don't necessarily know if it was really, really meant for that by the writers. And
yeah,
because especially yesteryear, where it's euthanasia is a big topic in that episode.
Was that the second or the third?
That was the second,
the
where
second one.
It was the one with Spock going back in his own lifetime and saving himself as a child.
And it had his pet.
Yes. And the pet needed to be euthanized after being poisoned in a fight with a lizard monster thing.
Oh gosh, I don't think I should watch that one.
No, and young Spock has to make the decision.
I'm gonna cry. I have to interrupt for a second because I've talked about on Shore Leave, my deep, deep love for Leonard Nimoy and the fact that I really haven't watched original series since he passed away over a year ago now. And I did read they re-released I Am Spock, and I had listened to that ages ago on audiobook. And so I read it in the last year. And then of course I read Shatner's book about Leonard, and I read a little piece from that on Shore Leave.
Mm-hmm.
So listening to Leonard's voice in this was just, I made it through, so I'm glad, but it was a little hard for a minute. But I'm at that point where I just feel very, very fondly whenever I hear him. And I think that going back and watching yesteryear, I may need to wait a little bit just because of the subject matter, and having to hear him talk about euthanasia. And people that know me know that I own a pet care company. And so that's something that I deal with on a regular basis. And so my gentle heart may need some time before I can watch that one. But yeah, I would say that definitely that kind of subject matter is, could kids understand it? Yeah, depending on their age. But I would have to agree, especially knowing the writers. I think that it was definitely made for adults, but possibly with kids in mind, maybe.
That sounds about right. I'd like to think that that's the case because I don't think that they dumbed anything down. But then again, as a kid who grew up in the 70s, I remember even in the early 80s, children's television was a little bit more mentally demanding than children's television of today
Yeah.
is. So maybe this was, quote unquote, intended for kids, even with its more mature subject matter. Maybe we're just looking at it in a different context because of what we're used to today.
Yeah. Well, I think it would be a really good idea. I mean, now that I've watched this episode and I'm very much into the animated series, I plan to continue watching it. So maybe it's something that we revisit at the end once we've watched all of them. Has our opinion changed at all on whether this is geared towards children, geared towards adults?
Excellent idea.
Yeah, definitely.
Excellent. Yeah, because we're definitely going to do a wrap up. We'll do a season wrap up for season 1, and then we'll do a series wrap up when we're done with the whole thing. So these are definitely topics we'll have on that agenda.
Well, put me down. I would love to be a part of it.
Oh, you are absolutely down.
Yay!
So, any other thoughts on the Lorelei Signal?
I wish that I had time to watch it again, and life is demanding, so I didn't get to do it. But no, overall, I think that it was an interesting episode. I loved the power that the women had, and I loved seeing Uhura take over. And it definitely gave me a bit to think about. And I will probably continue to think about Thela and her women and what exactly that's saying there, because it was definitely a bit confusing. Overall, I liked it. I'm jazzed to watch some more. So it was a great starting point for me.
Awesome. And thank you, as always, for taking the time out to come on the show and talk to us. I know this is not your primary series with us here on Tricorder Transmissions, but it's nice that you're bleeding over into other shows now.
This has opened a new door for me, and I'm excited to get to watch some Star Trek that I've never seen. I mean, how often do we get to say that? We sit here rewatching the different series over and over. I don't necessarily believe that the animated series should be overlooked. And from what I understand, it is canon, right?
The only episode I believe that they recanonized was Yesteryear.
Okay, well, interesting.
Yeah, but for the purposes of this commentary series that Craig and I are doing, we are treating it as if it's canon. Both of us agree that we believe it's canon. So, and also Chris Ritzer, our other contributor, he also believes that it's canon. So we're all going under that assumption, regardless of what the official word is.
Regardless of what Jim Morehouse says. I'd like to hop on the same bus there and agree with that. Maybe my opinion will change after I've seen it all. I don't know, but these are the characters that we know and love, voiced by the actors that we know and love, written by people involved in Star Trek, endorsed by Gene Roddenberry. So. Yep. To me, I love the Okudas. If people have not met them, then please take time out of your convention life to go say hi to them. Claire and I went up. They were doing free autographs, I think 2 or 3 years ago, along with Doug Drexler. They had done a panel, I think, and they were in the Roddenberry Theater, the big theater, just doing free autographs. And I had nothing to autograph, so I went and bought a Tribble that was in a little box, because people don't know I'm Tribble crazy. Being an animal lover, they are like the most appealing thing on animal type creature on Star Trek, aside from Spock's dog. I have a little stuffy of him that a friend had made for a cosplay that I was gifted with, that I just adore. But yeah, I collect a Tribble every year that I go to the Star Trek Las Vegas convention. I bring home a Tribble because we know they multiply. So I bought a Tribble in a little plastic thing, and I had them all sign it. And they were just such wonderful people. And I'm friends with Denise and Doug, and I think Mike on various social medias, and they're animal lovers, so I connect with them on that level. And Denise is just the sweetest. At least with my own experience, like she actually comments on stuff that I post, and I fangirl a bit. But when I'm not fangirling, I'm just super appreciative that the people involved in creating something that I love so much are just awesome, down to earth people that interact with you. It's amazing.
It's very cool. And speaking of tribbles, since you're a tribble fan, perhaps you would be interested in being part of the next animated series episode next week, which is the Tribble episode.
Yeah, yep.
With the infamous pink tribbles.
Yes, and I don't have a pink tribble, so this must be the year. It's a sign.
Very cool. So I thank you again, Heather, for being here. It's been absolutely awesome.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm delighted. Thank you so much.
I look forward to having you back next week. And our next episode of Shore Leave will be very, very soon.
Yes, very, very soon. We've already got content to share. We've just got to get people lined up and a date set. And for any Shore Leave fans out there, I promise we are setting up a cosplay episode as well. People are getting a little antsy. Given that there's almost less than 3 months until the convention, I personally do not have any new cosplay planned. But 3 months is crunch time for some of the people out there who've got major work to do. So we promise we will get that to you. I would say maybe the next one that we do after this upcoming one, we should do the cosplay one.
I agree. Sounds like a food plan to me.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And if you want to find the show, I'm sure you already found it because you're listening to it, but we are on social media at facebook.com/the Transmissions. Twitter is TTT_pod, the TricorderTransmissions.com. We are also on iTunes and our YouTube channel, and we're getting ready to get on the Google Play Store as well. So we're anywhere and everywhere that you could possibly look for podcasts. So thanks as always for listening, and we will see you next time. Hi there, thanks again for listening. If you're cruising the galaxy looking for even more Trek talk, why not visit our good friends Bill and Dan over at TrekGeeks.com? They've got a great podcast that covers a wide range of Star Trek topics, so you're sure to find something you'll love. And if you're in the mood for some awesome tunes, then you really need to head over to 5yearmission.net. The guys are writing a song for every episode of the original series, and each one is absolutely brilliant. So that's TrekGeeks.com and 5yearmission.net. Check them out today.